Winter, the season of silence and snow, when darkness falls early and stays late, when the world becomes a frozen, isolated wasteland. Most people find comfort in the winter months. Cozy fires, warm blankets, hot chocolate by the window as snow falls gently outside. But for some, winter brings something else. Something that hides in the blizzards. Something that waits in the frozen darkness. Tonight, I have 3 true winter horror stories that will make you think twice before venturing out into the cold. Stories of people who discovered that when you're stranded in the snow, miles from civilization, you're not always alone. So bundle up, lock your doors, and whatever you do, if you hear something moving outside in the snow, don't go looking for it. This is Mr. Night Scares. Marcus Chen had driven Highway 200 through rural Montana 100 times before. It was February 2016, and he was taking his girlfriend Emily to visit her parents in Missoula. They'd checked the weather forecast that morning. Clear skies, no problems expected, but weather in Montana can change in minutes. At 4:30 p.m., the first snowflakes began to fall. Marcus turned on the windshield wipers and smiled at Emily. "Just a little snow. We'll be fine." By 5 p.m., the snow was coming down so thick that Marcus could barely see 10 feet ahead. The road disappeared beneath a blanket of white. Other cars had pulled over or turned back, but Marcus kept going, confident he could make it through. At 5:47 p.m., the car slid. Marcus felt the tires lose traction, felt the vehicle fishtail wildly. Emily screamed as they spun across the empty highway. The car slammed into a snowbank with a sickening crunch. The engine sputtered and died. Marcus tried to restart it. Nothing. The battery was dead. He checked his phone. No signal. They were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by forest, with a blizzard raging and temperatures already dropping below zero. Staying in the car overnight would be suicide. They'd freeze to death. Through the curtain of snow, Marcus spotted something. A structure maybe 100 yards into the woods. "There," he pointed. "We can wait out the storm there." They bundled up and pushed out into the blizzard. The cold hit them like a physical force. The wind screamed around them, driving snow into their faces like needles. Marcus held Emily's hand tightly, terrified of losing her in the whiteout. The 100 yards felt like miles, but finally they reached it. An old hunting cabin, weathered and gray, half buried in snow. The door was unlocked. The cabin was small. One room with a wood-burning stove, a table, 2 chairs, and a single bed with a bare mattress. Dust covered everything, and ice had formed on the inside of the windows. But it had a roof and walls. It was shelter. Marcus found dry wood stacked by the stove and matches in a drawer. Within 20 minutes, he had a fire going. Emily and Marcus huddled together by the stove, slowly thawing out. "We'll stay here tonight," Marcus said. "The storm should pass by morning. Then we'll hike back to the car and flag down help." Emily nodded, too exhausted to argue. They ate the granola bars and water bottles they'd grabbed from the car. As night fell, the temperature outside plummeted. The wind howled around the cabin, making the walls shake and groan. At 11:30 p.m., they heard it. Footsteps, crunching through the snow outside the cabin. Marcus sat up immediately, his heart pounding. Emily grabbed his arm. "Did you hear that?" The footsteps were slow and deliberate. Crunch, crunch, crunch. They were circling the cabin, moving around the perimeter, close to the walls. "Maybe it's an animal," Marcus whispered, though he didn't believe it. The footsteps were too measured, too purposeful, too human. They listened in frozen silence as the footsteps completed a full circle around the cabin. Then they started again. Another circle, and another. For over an hour, whatever was out there walked around and around their shelter, never stopping, never varying its pace. Marcus crept to the window and carefully peered out through a gap in the frost-covered glass. The blizzard was still raging. Visibility was almost zero. He couldn't see anything, just endless white and darkness. But the footsteps continued, circle after circle after circle. "Why aren't they coming to the door?" Emily asked. "If someone needs help, why don't they knock? Why just walk around us?" Marcus had no answer. The logic made no sense. A lost hiker would seek shelter, would call out, would knock on the door. But this felt like something else. Like they were being studied, observed, circled like prey. At 2 a.m., the footsteps finally stopped. The silence was somehow worse. Marcus and Emily sat by the dying fire, both too terrified to sleep, both staring at the door, waiting for it to open, waiting for whatever was out there to finally make its move. But nothing happened. The hours crawled by. The cabin creaked and groaned in the wind. The fire burned down to embers. And they waited. When dawn finally came, Marcus felt brave enough to open the door. The blizzard had passed during the night. The sky was clear, pale blue, and the world was covered in fresh snow that glittered in the morning light. And in that pristine snow, they saw the footprints. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. They circled the cabin in layers, ring after ring of deep boot prints pressed into the snow. Marcus counted 7 complete circles before he lost track. All night long, someone had been out there, walking around their cabin in the sub-zero cold. But that wasn't the worst part. Every single footprint faced inward, toward the cabin. Whoever had made those tracks hadn't been walking in circles. They had been standing in place in a ring around the cabin, all facing the walls. Facing them, just standing there in the freezing darkness. Watching. Emily started to cry. Marcus felt his stomach turn. How many people had been out there? The footprints were all the same size, the same boot pattern. One person had walked around their cabin over and over, and then stood in the snow for hours, staring at the walls, never knocking, never calling out, just watching. They found another set of prints leading away from the cabin, heading deeper into the woods. Single file, walking away calmly, as if the person had simply finished their observation and left. Marcus and Emily hiked back to the highway as fast as they could. A state trooper picked them up within an hour. They told him everything. He drove them back to the cabin with 2 other officers to investigate. The footprints were still there. The officers took photographs and measurements. They followed the trail into the woods, but it disappeared after about half a mile. No missing persons were reported in the area. No other cabins or structures existed for 20 miles. Whoever had spent the night circling Marcus and Emily's shelter had come from nowhere and disappeared into nothing. The officers had no explanation. Marcus and Emily never went back to that part of Montana. They got married 2 years later, and they have a rule now. They never talk about that night. Never discuss what they heard in the darkness. Never try to explain the footprints that faced inward, or why someone would stand in the freezing cold for hours just to watch them. Some questions don't have good answers, and sometimes it's better not to ask. Jack Morrison was an experienced ice fisherman. He'd been going out on frozen lakes in Minnesota since he was 8 years old. By 2018, at age 42, Jack knew the ice like most people knew their own living rooms. Lake Superior in January was his favorite. The big lake froze solid in the deep cold, and the fishing was excellent. On January 18, 2018, Jack loaded his gear into his truck and drove 3 hours north to his usual spot. The ice was 18 inches thick. Perfect. Safe. He drove his ATV out onto the frozen lake, pulling his shack behind him on a sled. He went far out, almost 2 miles from shore, where the big fish lived and other fishermen rarely ventured. By noon, he had his shack set up. It was 8 feet by 6 feet, with a small propane heater, a cot, a camp stove, and everything he needed for a comfortable 3-day trip. He drilled 3 fishing holes through the ice, set up his lines, and settled in. The first day was perfect. Jack caught 4 walleye and a beautiful lake trout. He cooked one for dinner, read a paperback novel, and fell asleep to the sound of wind whistling across the frozen lake. The second day was good too. More fish, more reading, more silence. Jack loved being alone out here. No phone signal, no internet, no people. Just him, the ice, and the fish below. But that night, things changed. At 11:47 p.m., Jack was lying on his cot, half asleep, when he heard it, a tapping sound. Top, 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 coming from the wall of his shack. Jack sat up. Ice did make noises. The lake was constantly shifting with temperature changes. But this didn't sound like ice. It sounded deliberate, like knuckles rapping on wood. The tapping stopped. Jack waited. Nothing. He went back to his cot. 5 minutes later, the tapping started again. But this time, it was coming from a different wall. And it was louder. Top, top, top. Jack got up, taking his flashlight. He opened the shack door and looked out into the darkness. The night was clear, with a half-moon casting pale blue light across the endless expanse of ice. He could see for miles. Nothing moved. No one was out there. He closed the door and locked it. The tapping moved to the 3rd wall, then the 4th. It was circling his shack, moving clockwise around the structure. Top, top, top. Always 3 taps, then silence, then 3 more taps from a different position. Jack stood in the center of his shack, turning slowly, following the sound as it circled him. This wasn't ice. This was something tapping on his walls. Something outside. Something that was walking around his shack in the middle of the frozen lake, 2 miles from shore, in the middle of the night. Then the tapping stopped, and he heard the voice. It came from directly beneath him, from under the ice, muffled but clear, speaking his name. Jack. He froze. His heart stopped. That was impossible. There was 18 inches of solid ice beneath his shack. Nothing could be under there. Nothing could survive under there. Jack, the voice said again, calm, almost friendly. Come down here, Jack. Jack stumbled backward. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. He was hallucinating. Carbon monoxide from the heater, maybe. He quickly cracked open the door vent, letting in fresh air. Jack, the voice called again. It's so cold up there. Come down where it's warm. That made no sense. Under the ice would be colder. The water beneath the ice was barely above freezing. But the voice sounded so reasonable, so inviting. Jack looked down at his fishing holes. They were dark circles in the ice, dropping into black water. As he watched, something pale moved beneath the surface of one hole. Something that might have been a hand. He grabbed his coat and boots, ready to run, ready to abandon everything and drive his ATV back to shore as fast as it would go. But when he reached for the door handle, he stopped, because he couldn't remember which direction the shore was. Jack had been ice fishing on this lake for decades. He always knew his bearings. Always. But right now, looking out the small window of his shack, the landscape looked exactly the same in every direction. Endless white ice stretching to darkness. No landmarks. No lights. No way to tell north from south. If he ran in the wrong direction, he'd be going deeper into the lake. Miles from land. He'd freeze to death before he found his way back. Jack! The voice came again. Closer now. Louder. Don't run. Come down. We've been waiting for you. The voice had said we. Jack backed into the corner of his shack, as far from the fishing holes as he could get. He pulled his knees to his chest and closed his eyes. The tapping started again. But now it wasn't on the walls. It was on the ice itself, underneath his shack. Dozens of hands tapping on the underside of the ice in a chaotic rhythm that sounded almost like applause. Jack covered his ears. He sat there for hours, shaking. The tapping continued. The voice kept calling his name. Sometimes it was one voice. Sometimes it was many voices, overlapping, all saying his name in a horrible chorus. When dawn finally came, Jack opened his eyes. The tapping had stopped. The voices were gone. He looked out the window and saw the shoreline, clearly visible in the morning light, less than 2 miles away. He knew exactly where he was now. Jack didn't waste time. He left everything. His gear, his fish, his expensive shack. He just got on his ATV and drove for shore, constantly looking back, expecting to see something following him across the ice. He made it to land. He drove home. He didn't tell anyone what happened. 3 days later, he got a call from the county sheriff. Some ice fishermen had found Jack's shack. They were concerned because it was abandoned with all his gear still inside. Jack told them he'd just left some equipment behind. A week later, the sheriff called again. They needed him to come get his shack. Plus, there was something strange they wanted to show him. Jack didn't want to go back, but the sheriff insisted. So Jack drove up, and the sheriff took him out on the ice. When they reached the shack, the sheriff opened the door and showed him inside. All of Jack's fishing gear had been moved. His rods, his tackle box, his cooler, everything had been arranged in a perfect circle around the center fishing hole. And in the middle of that circle, someone had melted a much larger hole through the ice, 3 feet wide, big enough for a person to fit through. The water in the hole was completely still, dark, like a portal to nothing. "We figured maybe you'd know what happened here," the sheriff said. "Was someone else using your shack?" Jack stared at the hole, at the circle of gear, at the dark water that seemed to go down forever. "No," he said quietly. "I was alone." Jack never went ice fishing again. He sold all his gear. He wouldn't even drive past Lake Superior anymore, because sometimes late at night he still heard it. The tapping, the voice calling his name from somewhere deep and dark and cold. "Come down, Jack. Come down where it's warm." And the worst part? Sometimes he wanted to. Sarah Winters loved hiking. At 29, she'd climbed mountains in 6 different states. She was careful, experienced, and always prepared. But in December 2019, she made an exception. The White Mountains of New Hampshire were beautiful in winter, and she wanted to try a winter hike. Just once. A short day hike. 5 miles out, 5 miles back. The weather report predicted clear skies. Sarah started her hike at 9 a.m. on December 14th. She wore proper winter boots, layers of warm clothing, and carried a GPS device, a map, a compass, extra food, water, and emergency supplies. The first 3 hours were perfect. Beautiful scenery, good trail conditions. At noon, she stopped for lunch at a scenic overlook. She took photos. She ate her sandwich. She felt completely safe. Then, at 12:30 p.m., the weather changed. Clouds rolled in from nowhere. Within minutes, the clear blue sky disappeared. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. And then the snow started. Not gentle flurries. Thick, heavy snow that fell so fast Sarah could barely see 20 feet ahead. Within 5 minutes, the world disappeared into white. She couldn't see the trail, couldn't see the trees, couldn't see anything but endless swirling snow. A whiteout. Sarah immediately stopped moving. Rule number 1 in a whiteout is don't walk. You lose all sense of direction. People have walked off cliffs in whiteouts without realizing it. Sarah pulled out her GPS device. She'd marked her starting point that morning. She could navigate back using the coordinates. She turned on the device. The screen flickered, then went black. Dead. She pulled out her phone. No signal. But the phone could still show her compass direction. She opened the compass app. The needle spun wildly, pointing in every direction, unable to find north. Sarah felt real fear. She was alone on a mountain in a blizzard with no GPS and no compass. The smart thing was to wait. The storm would pass. But the temperature was still dropping. Her face was numb. Her fingers were getting stiff inside her gloves. If she sat still for 2 hours in this cold, she might get hypothermia. She had to move, had to get down the mountain. But which way? Then she saw it. A figure. Through the snow, maybe 30 feet ahead. Another person. Relief flooded through Sarah. Another hiker. Someone else caught in the storm. "Hey!" Sarah called out. "Hey, wait!" The figure didn't stop. Didn't turn around. Just kept walking, slowly, steadily, through the snow. Sarah followed. She couldn't see details through the whiteout. Just a dark shape, human-sized, moving through the white. "Please wait," she called again. "I'm lost. I need help." The figure kept walking. Same pace, never responding to her calls. Sarah followed for 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. She kept calling out, but the figure never acknowledged her, just walked. After half an hour, Sarah was exhausted. But she kept following because what else could she do? This person seemed to know where they were going. After an hour, she started to wonder, why wouldn't this person acknowledge her? The snow kept falling. The world stayed white. And the figure kept walking, always just visible through the storm. After an hour and 15 minutes, the wind changed. For just a moment, the snow thinned, and Sarah saw where she was. She was standing at the edge of a cliff, a sheer drop-off that fell hundreds of feet into a rocky ravine below. One more step and she would have walked right off the edge. Sarah screamed and threw herself backward, landing hard in the snow. She crawled away from the edge on her hands and knees, shaking, unable to believe how close she'd come to dying. When she finally looked up, the figure was gone. She turned around, looking in every direction. No one was there. And then she looked down at the snow around her. One set of footprints. Only one. Her own footprints, leading right up to the edge of the cliff. No other tracks. No sign that anyone else had been there. Sarah started crying. She'd seen someone. She'd followed them for over an hour. But there were no footprints. The snow was starting to ease. Sarah could see more now. She could see the trail about 50 yards to her left. She'd been walking parallel to it, just far enough off that she would have missed it completely. If she'd stayed on this course, she would have gone right over the cliff. Sarah carefully made her way back to the trail. She followed it down the mountain, checking her position constantly. She made it to the bottom at 4:30 p.m., just as darkness was falling. She sat in her car with the heat blasting for 20 minutes before she felt warm enough to drive. She told the story to a park ranger the next day. The ranger listened carefully and then pulled out a map. "You said you were here? At this cliff?" Sarah nodded. "That's Devil's Drop," the ranger said quietly. "For people have died there in the last 10 years. All of them in winter. All of them in whiteout conditions. They walk right off the edge without realizing it's there." He paused. "Some hikers have reported seeing figures in the snow up there, leading them toward the edge. We always assumed it was just hallucination. But you're not the first to mention it." "But I didn't die," Sarah said. "The wind cleared right before I would have walked off. That saved my life." The ranger nodded slowly. "Maybe you just got lucky. The wind cleared at the right moment. Coincidence." But he didn't sound convinced. Sarah never hiked the White Mountains in winter again, because she doesn't know what she followed that day. Doesn't know if it was trying to kill her or save her. All she knows is that she followed a figure through the snow for over an hour, and that figure left no footprints. 3 stories, 3 winter encounters, 3 people who survived. Marcus and Emily, who spent a night in a cabin while someone circled them in the snow for hours, standing motionless in sub-zero temperatures, watching them through the walls. Jack Morrison, who heard voices calling to him from beneath the ice, voices that knew his name and wanted him to come down into the dark water. And Sarah Winters, who followed a figure with no footprints through a blizzard, right to the edge of a cliff she couldn't see. Winter is beautiful, but winter is also deadly, and sometimes in the coldest places, in the deepest snows, things exist that shouldn't. Things that watch, things that call, things that lead. So stay warm this winter, stay safe, check the weather, tell people where you're going. And if you're ever alone in the snow and you hear footsteps, or voices, or see a figure walking through the storm, remember these stories, and think carefully before you follow. This has been Mr. Night Scares. Until next time, stay out of the cold.